All right. I'll do the introduction real quick. Here we go. Pro Pup 101 podcast here with Phil Daru and backed by Product One, Victory Multi-Sport, Variety, and Hill Farm CBD and Ambassador with How Head. What's up, Phil? How you doing? Just give us a little background about yourself and go from there.
Background, okay. Performance coach, entrepreneur, business owner, leader, speaker, all of that. I've been able to make a name for myself in combat sports. Been in the game for 15 years now, coaching. Was a professional fighter for about 8 years with the American top team. Played college football, did all that there. Got my degree in exercise science. Opened up my first gym at the age of 22. Then from there, started to understand like the ins and outs of training elite athletes, primarily for the sport of MMA. And then from there, it kind of catapulted into working with individuals like the name Dustin Poirier, Joanna Jacek, Edson Barbosa, Junior Dos Santos, pretty much the who's who of UFC. I was able to parlay that into working with other athletes in the professional world, especially in boxing, judo, jiu-jitsu, combat sports, and so on. So now open up my my other facility here in Deerfield Beach, Florida. I also have two gyms that I own and do seminars around the world. So that's what I'm doing right now, and a podcast too as well. So I like what you're doing.
No, you're real busy and everything. I see everything going on and everything like really hitting hard for you and everything. And I was wondering, also I know a lot of people don't know, like you got battle tested. I got it right above here on the picture, right above me. And battle tested recovery. Tell us a little about that. Like you came out with that product and everything for everybody to help out. And what made you come out with that product and to really amplify everybody and get them going on it?
Yeah, I mean, it was primarily because when we were doing weight cuts, I was just sick of having to piece together all these different supplements for our post weigh-in. So I was like, you know, it'd be great to just have one all-in-one supplement that my guys can take as soon as they step off the scale. And one of my coaches who does primarily all the weight cuts now, he's a exercise physiologist. We came together and formulated this product here. And again, it's been great. The goal really for us is to, not only is it for fighters and weight cut, but it's also good for recovery too as well. So any hard training session, especially if you're looking to replenish from your glycogen stores all the way to your electrolytes, it takes care of that. On top of that, it brings down cortisol, and it's also a de-stressor, obviously. And then again, when it comes down to just being able to recover from training sessions, this is going to be a good one for you too as well.
Awesome. Because I tested it. You know, I tried a little bit of it because one of the guys had it that I knew, and they tried it out, and it was really good. You know, so I really suggest everybody out there to really help out, to really get to it. And then also I have went over your mentorship, you know, for coaching, and I met I had Brandon on, and then I had Rob on, and then I had a different perspective of it, and they were, you know, really inspirational and motivated by everything. And it was awesome hearing what they had to say about you. And it's awesome. It's an honor to have you on here right now. And I just want to ask you, during that, like when you make the, for the fighters, especially when you make like all the routines, you know, for them for the strength conditioning part, you break it down like before, like a 12-week program to an 8-week program for them?
Yeah, most likely, depending on the time frame we have for the fight. Usually you have about 12 to 8 weeks. So ideally I like to get 2 to 6 weeks of an off-camp training. So we're really focusing on general fitness, building up work capacity. And then from there we can transition into a peaking phase where we would do what I dub the condensed conjugate model, whereas basically we take the conjugate, the 4-day-a-week, and I condensed it into 2 or 3-day-a-week models, depending on how much time we have with the athlete. Because of MMA is so demanding when it comes down to all the modalities of training, I usually only have about 2 days a week inside the weight room. So I needed to still be able to work on both sides of that force velocity curve, working high strength and speed and power and conditioning in a vertical integrated model, but still be able to get as much frequency as possible with them. So, you know, that was where I decided it took a long time for us to really formulate it and get it right, but now we've been using it for about right now 5 years, and it's been working really well. Not only for myself, but for the coaches that I work with too as well, all the mentorees, and those people that they work with. So it's been great, you know, and we'll see what happens after that. But yeah, as far as how we structure a program, it goes off of the schedule that we have. It goes off of the calendar of competition, and then we just train accordingly. So it's not as simple as it seems, but it can be as long as you have a skeleton and you have a system in place.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was noticing about that, and then like I know how Dustin sometimes you're saying has those short. Sometimes he takes he took fights before in the past, and I did notice this. Was I was going to bring this up with you is that when Dustin was in the fights before,
Mhm.
and I seen his his conditioning and everything. You could tell certain ways he used a lot of energy and other ways, and then his strength too. His strength when he fought Conor McGregor, his strength got a lot tougher, and his conditioning got a lot better too. You could tell how longer he went in his strides.
I appreciate that, but I mean, he's always had a genetic predisposition to go the distance, and on top of that, he loves to fight. So
Hmm.
when you become efficient, that does play a big role, right? So he's been fighting since he was 16, and he's been in Zupa in the UFC and the WEC since he was 20 years old. So with that, that does come into play. Improving on his strength was my major concern that I wanted to make sure that we were working on building up his absolute and relative strength, because when I first got him, we first started working, he didn't really have that strength that he needed to, especially going up in a weight class, because he started at 145 and we were trying to develop him into the 155 division. So we really worked on mobility, we worked on strengthening, we worked on being able to produce force in different positions, and that made him more efficient in those positions, which then also helped with his energy output. So, yeah, it goes back to strength being the overlying factor of it all. But again, from a genetics standpoint, he already had a great gas tank. We just improved upon it based on the
Hmm.
limitations, based on what we saw that was limiting him from a movement standpoint perspective. He had a hip issue in the beginning of his career, all the way up until after he fought. I think it was after he fought Khabib. He still had a hip issue, and it still bothers him to this day. But now it's not as bad. But he wasn't able to really bring up his knee and his hip past 90 degrees, and he couldn't externally rotate in that 90-degree angle.
Oh
So if you
wow.
ever looked at the first fight with Justin Gaethje, he wasn't able to really fully check the leg kicks because he just didn't have that range of motion and the reaction time to react to those leg kicks. So he had to just eat them. And obviously
Hmm.
that's not good when Justin Gaethje is trying to kick your legs off. That's an issue. But we did good that fight. We'll do good this fight. But with Dustin, man, he's always had that ability to fight, which is always good when you get an athlete that is just purely for that sport, right? It doesn't matter what it is, MMA, jiu-jitsu, boxing, football, whatever. If
Yeah.
they're made for that sport, it makes it a lot easier for a performance coach to get them to be a better athlete. Because if we can get them to be a better athlete, they can be better at their sport.
Yeah, that's amazing because, uh, yeah, he progressed in and strength wise and everything. Like I was saying, like you were saying and everything, and that's amazing to see because I noticed his fights and everything got, a lot stronger in different ways and perspective wise. It was awesome to see all that and improving wise and everything. So yeah, awesome to see that. Also, I want to ask you to get from back when we were fighting and then to get to the coaching side, how did you how did you say, what, I'm gonna put the fight aside and I'm gonna start coaching a lot more? What made you want to get into, starting to coach more and then instead and let the fighting go?
There's a couple of factors. One was forced on me, and the other was like 50-50. It was my decision. I So I had a gym, and I was building up that gym. I built up my notoriety in the area, and at that time, I was really coaching a lot. So I was training a lot of people, but I was also trying to train myself for pro fights. So it was pretty hard, just spreading my time, a lot, and the
Mhm.
focus was off in a lot of ways. So I would lose fights that I shouldn't have lost just because of focus issues and not being able to get to the gym and train. And so I had to really come up with a decision. Luckily, I had won my last fight. I was doing well, and I was getting ready for my next fight, and I was like 2 weeks out, and I got kicked in the back of the head on accident too. It was actually like a freak accident. We were just doing we were doing technical sparring, so it wasn't even like we were going live. And I got kicked in the back of the head, and I was concussed, which is, obviously I've been concussed plenty of times before, but this was lingering on, and I was like I said, 2 weeks out from my fight, so I didn't really want to take the risk. So I went to the neurologist, and we ran some tests, and he said, basically what they're seeing inside my brain is that if you don't stop by the time you're 50, you're going to have Alzheimer's. So with 8, 9, somewhere around 8 or 9 concussions that I remember from playing football all the way up from 7 years old to college and then going right into MMA, there was a lot of head trauma, and it accumulates over time. So I had a decision to make, a big decision, and this is like 2 weeks later. I had to fully make the decision, and I called my coach, Dean Thomas, and I asked him, because I was like, you know what, the only person I'm really going to listen to at this particular time is him. I called him up, and I go, what do you suggest? He's like, man, listen, if it was your knee or like whatever, like something limb related, we can work around it. But if it's your brain, you really don't want to mess with that. Mm-hmm. And at that particular time, my gym was growing. I was getting a lot of clients, so my business was booming per se, and also my son was about to be born, so I had a family that I had to look after. And so I made a decision to ultimately stop fighting and pursue coaching full time. And that's when things started to really skyrocket in a bit and allowed me to really focus on the task of coaching and building up my business. And so that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I hear a lot of stuff going on with the brain. They're actually checking up on amateur fights now, because I have one of the guys that does the cards for Pettis promotion in Indiana. He actually helps out and sets up all the fights, and they said you always have to get an ETA scan done to make sure the brain's every 6 months now, and then blood work every 6 months. And that's good. They checked it up to make sure long-term effects. Now they have that technology to do all that, so that's amazing. Yep. And then
for sure.
For the business wise, did you know it was gonna, like say when you bring in different coaches, is there say you bring in certain coaches that do with the women that fight, certain coaches that do with the bare knuckle fighters, and then certain coaches that go say the UFC fighters, do you segregate everybody, and break them up in the different parts in your gym?
Yeah, yes and no. I think that, everybody should be well-versed. I think that you should be able to coach anybody, but you should have a specialty, right? So even with myself, I know that my specialty is MMA and boxing, and because I'm more familiar with the sports, right? Yeah. I grew up boxing, and I fought professionally in MMA. When we get a guy that, let's say, is more jiu-jitsu based, right, that came up doing jiu-jitsu, then I'll probably have him work with more of the jiu-jitsu practitioners, the guys that grapple competitively, so on. Maybe we have some guys that came up playing football, right? And we got the young guys and they're high school kids, and they're able to communicate with the high school kids because they're younger, right? So I have a young kid, a young coach now, his name's Jack, and he's 19 years old, but the kid's well beyond his years, right? Super smart. He's taken to all the methods of the training, the principles, he understands it. But he's a sponge. So he sees me, he sees all the other coaches, and he's able to relay over the stuff that he's learned each and every day and implement that right away. Another thing is that he's able to connect with those younger kids, those high school kids, those middle school kids, because he's closer in age. So now they have more to talk about. And again, they're able to train with them. Now, on that other side, you got professional athletes that want a little bit more seriousness, that want somebody that, understands life a little bit more, has more experience. And that's when, we'll put somebody in there that is highly experienced, right? That has a little bit more life in them, you know what I'm saying? Or I should say lifetime in them, right? Maybe those 35, 40-year-old coaches that's been in the game, that had that experience with so many different athletes. So yeah, I mean, and then when it comes down to specifics of the demands of the sport, right? Somebody may have more specialty in endurance-based training, or more have specialty in powerlifting, right? So then we kind of implement that in, and we make sure that the coach matches the athlete and what the actual sport requires. But again, like I said, every coach should be well versed. They should know, everything that has to do with any type of style of training. But again, you want to have a specialty coach too as well, or you want to have some type of specialty and niche, because that's going to help with business, and it's going to help you connect with that particular athlete.
Yeah, so being diverse is really a key to the to progress, in a different, in the coaching stuff too. I got you. That's amazing. Yeah, because I hear a lot of like when I'm gonna be honest with you, like the strength and conditioning in the setup that you do, and then the body movements. And I was wondering when you started doing these body movements, and then you started like you do them on your own first, and then you connect into progressing out and make your own say for the fighters. You're saying like say the hip movements when you start doing hip movements, I mean, and you start doing like the leg movements, you start like you work it on yourself, and then you like, hey, this really helps this ligament, this really helps the knee or the ankle in different ways. How do you sell that? How did you set all that up?
Yeah, I mean, the gym is ultimately my lab, right?
Yeah.
So I'll be in there and I'll just focus on, all right, what's going to benefit the athlete? I look at the athlete first and foremost and what they're lagging, and whatever they're lagging, then I'm going to go ahead and put together a pattern that is going to either eliminate dysfunction, increase performance, improve movement quality, so on and so forth. So I'll get on the floor and I'll really work on looking at positions of what the athlete actually has to go through in the sport. And then I'll look at muscles that need to be activated in order for that movement to occur. Then I'll also look at the joints and the muscles that cross that joint and see exactly what we need to strengthen, what we need to increase range, and then also what type of active end range control do we need to have, especially for sports like grappling, and jiu-jitsu based sports, because you have to be strong in these unorthodox positions.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to like testing it, yeah, I'll test it on myself. Then I'll test it on one of my best athletes, the ones that know how to move very well, or who have been with me for a long time. Somebody like a Jake Boswick or a Tyler Ray. These guys have been with me for 6-7 years, right? Amori Shea has been with me for 7 years. So like they already know the basics. They already understand how to put their body in certain positions because I put them there so many times over. So now it's like I have to try to stump them with their movement, right? Because they're so good at moving because of the fact that they've been doing it for so long. Now it's time to up the end. So now I'll go ahead and I'll figure out ways that I know that are going to challenge them, whether it be in base positions, and then have them contract muscles in base positions to increase that range of motion in that position, or I'll have them produce force in a dynamic fashion in those end range positions. And that way that correlates over into whatever sport they're trying to do, whether it be MMA, boxing, whatever.
Yeah, that's amazing because I know a lot of people probably ask like, does he, how you do it, testing. They seen your YouTube videos on your YouTube channel, and then they see that how you progress in certain ways in your body movements, and then how you use it, and especially on your short clips. The short clips are really helpful. If anybody's listening to that, the short clips are very helpful. The body movements, because I mean, I've noticed myself is I use your body movements with the kettlebells, and then with the bands and everything, and you could tell a big difference in like a week or two. It's amazing how fast the movements, and then also I want to get this, how on the bands, how did you say, what, I want to try to use the bands more often? Was it because fighters are getting injured, like was going through like an injury, or was it because it helped you in your fighting career in the past too?
Well, so one of my mentors, Louis Simmons, Westside Barbell, he started with the whole band phenomenon, right? So he started to put bands on bars so that he could lengthen the strength curve. He can increase the compensatory acceleration. So there's no deceleration of the bar path. This way you can fully work on accelerating through and getting strong and being fast throughout the entire range of motion because there is no deceleration. So when you're looking at like, it's a form of accommodated resistance that allows us to keep pushing load in high force and high velocity without having to slow down, right? So then you look at bands and it acts as human tissue. It stretches and contracts. So when we're looking to improve on function, when we're looking to improve on range of motion, when we're looking to improve on strength throughout the entire range of motion, this is something that it can help with. So bands have been around for a long, long time. I just was able to utilize it for my fighters because I wanted to make sure that they had the ability to accelerate through the entire movement, whether that be for a barbell lift or for a single leg takedown or whatever we want to do, right? So even with throwing punches, if you look at the force displacement, when it's horizontal, if we can attach a band through our back and then we throw straight punches, and we can work on the end range of your punch and get that snap at the end range because we're working through that end range. We're getting tension and we're increasing tension at the end range, which is the most important part of a punch when you tie in the kinetic energy and everything else that goes through a punch. So, it starts from the legs and it goes out to the outer extremities. So when I'm trying to isolate an end range, I want to utilize bands.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, I know a lot of people they're asking about the bands and everything and how to progress, and that's in a positive way. And then with injuries, I know a lot of people are asking me about it. And then also when you got into the barbell and then the heavy lifting, because I know you're doing all that right now. And when you get into it, how did you would you play football when you were back in the day? I know you played football and you progressed that. Is that what got you into lifting? Progression lift heavy weight and really push and drive yourself into a new direction in that way?
I've always been into fitness. I've always been into building performance, building my body, being in shape. I was the kid that did push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups and sprinting and gathering people to come play football at 4 to 6 years old. So it's always been in me. When I got to about 12 to 13 years old, that's when I really started to weight train. And my grandfather was the first person to actually bring me to a Gold's Gym. He snuck me in a Gold's Gym. I was supposed to be 16. He snuck me in at 13. And then I saw him at 70. I think he was around 72 or 73. But he would rep out 225 on the bench press. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I got good genetics. So now I know that I can do this because I already knew that I was strong based on peers.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how strong I was until I started lifting weights with my peers. On top of that, it showed me that my work ethic was over the top with a lot of my peers. Whereas I was always the one gathering people together. And I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant or whatever, but I think that was one of my major strengths was the effort that I put in, and it allowed me to be stronger. Because I'm not the biggest guy. And I'm not necessarily can be the strongest. There's a lot of kids nowadays that are super strong, crazy strong.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I will do if anybody comes to me to try to train, I'm going to try to beat them, right? So with my competitiveness, my effort, I think that's what sets me apart from the rest. And I'm not saying that, there's others that can't beat me or whatever, but I'm going to die trying. Like you put me up against anybody, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to tear something off the bone. Something's going to happen. It may not be good. Either that or I'm going to win. So either way, I lose, die trying, or I win.
I think that's the also on when you say that it's you have the genetics and it's the fighting when we probably used to fight too. Like I used to fight. I think the same thing. Because like I have that willpower to when I'm fighting that I know I'm gonna win this or I'm gonna try I'm gonna die trying on that because I'm gonna go all out on it. And if I don't win, I don't win, and it's not the end of the world. That guy for that day is the hardest worker, he worked hard at me and every day that I took off, or whatnot. Also, I want to ask you, because I know you always have stuff going on, you're busy. You work like 7 days a week, like every single day. I want to know how your time management is. You put it on your phone, and then when you put it on your phone, do you write it down, or do you do both? Because I know a lot of people I've talked to, like business-wise and athletic-wise, they usually go on their phone, and then some people actually are now telling me they're actually writing it down a lot more.
Both. I'm a creature of habit when it comes down to scheduling, and I'll have several different calendars and schedulers or schedule appointments on any device that I have. So either is my MacBook, my cell phone. I have it written down. I have it on whiteboard. So I have it everywhere just so I know. I like things big and broad. So I like to write it out first on a big whiteboard. And then from there, I'll put it on my phone for reminders. And then I also have my assistant that keeps me on point with my scheduling, which is key for me right now. And it also helps because one of my, my assistant is one of my athletes, Maureen Shea. She's a two-time world champion. And she's very conscientious. She's very methodical and scheduled and routine. So if she's routine, she keeps me on the routine and we're good to go. So you need somebody that is just as anal as you, if not more than you, to keep you accountable with that. But on top of that, you got to keep yourself accountable. So utilizing these reminders and having it everywhere has helped me out a lot. And sticking to the routine and understanding that, yeah, there's going to be times where you have to change things up a bit, and there's going to be things that come up that you have to kind of delegate to. But I would say pivot to, not delegate, but pivot to, and then you can delegate your time based upon if it's important or not. But what I would say is find out what's the most important thing for you, go after it, and then from there schedule out your time so that you do have, I hate to say the word balance, but you do have some versatility, right? Yeah. Where you want to have time, you want to, especially if you have a family, if you have kids, you want to spend time with the kids. So I always make sure, no matter what, that I get home. If I'm local, if I'm in the area, if I'm not traveling, I get home at a time where I can put my son to sleep, or at least read him something before he goes to bed. And that time is crucial for me, especially at this age. He's 8 years old. So I want to make sure that I'm there for him at that particular time. And then, if I'm out of the state, even sometimes out of the country, I'll make sure that I FaceTime him. And it's the same thing with my wife. Oh, we always talk every day, no matter what, even if I'm traveling or not.
Yeah, that's amazing. A lot of hitting, on the time management and the family life, and I feel it's the same thing. A lot of people, they don't put that time, they get so busy, they forget, hey, I gotta, I want to go home, and I get home a little later, and then to get that time in sometimes, and for you to get that time in and be home, read the story to your son, and then talk to your wife, everyday communication, that's key, because that helps you. Like I read before in books, and I read everywhere, you have to have that communication, with your loved ones in your life, and if you don't, that actually draws a ship, to be successful, and that's what I see. And everybody I talk to and everything. So, but no, I mean, go ahead. What are you saying?
No, I was saying, like, when you develop a routine and you have a system, it also helps, right? So if you don't deviate from that system and you stay disciplined in your approach, then it does become routine, and you don't stray away from that process. When somebody doesn't have values, doesn't live in their virtue, doesn't have purpose, it can go astray. It can go any which way, and they're kind of just living life as it comes to you, whereas you're not living with a purpose. So every day you have to remind yourself of your purpose. And when you do that, it's a lot easier for you to manage your time effectively, because things become more important than others. Mm-hmm. And that's where you set your schedule, because there's a lot of times back when I was younger, I'm 34 now, in my 20s, like, I said yes to everything. I was just trying shit, right? And I think it was good and a bad thing, because one, it allowed me to experience a lot, right? But it also wasted a lot of my time where it didn't need to be spent. But I will say this, I learned throughout that process that some things aren't important to say yes to. And you have to understand that. And when you understand that, your time becomes more valuable. Yeah. And so what I've really come to realize is that, even going on this podcast, I want to do this. It's not because I have to, I want to. And the reason why is because I know that I can help somebody, or I can relay over information, or I can talk with you and we can chop it up and probably do something later, right? Where we do something, another podcast. But the goal is to help people, right? And the goal for yourself is to be happy helping people. Mm-hmm. Because this is why we're here. So when I look at it, I go, all right, is this really worth my time? Is this going to help somebody? is this going to progress me and the situation that I have, my brand, whatever, the people that are looking upon me? Maybe this helps somebody else out. Maybe it helps you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, okay, so it's working. Right? A lot of people just do things just to do them. And I understand that when you're younger. When you get to a certain level, you have to be very conscious of what you're doing and the time you spend because you can't get that back.
Yeah, that's time. They always say time is valuable, and every time I hear every guy, and every actually woman, every person out there, they ask for one thing. They say, what would you rather, what would you have most of? And it would be time. What would you have the most of?
Yep.
Every single person I've talked to, they always said because they want more time with their family or more time with, their
Yep.
stuff, whoever else is in their, they want to spend time with. So, I mean, I've learned that.
And
I'm
you
in
know
my
what? And
30s.
you know what?
But
I don't want to be that person saying that. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't want to be that person going on my
Yep.
deathbed saying, wish I had more time to do this. I wish I had more time with my family. I wish I had more time with friends. I wish I had more time to go on these vacations. Hell no, I'm trying to do that now, right? And I don't want to leave this earth with regret. So at the same time, I'm going to be conscious and I'm going to make sure that I have, and I'm precise and detailed and structured so that this doesn't happen, right?
100%,
I mean,
100%. Because I've noticed I worked a lot. So I was in MMA. I fought too, and then I went. I went to working, and I was working 6, 7 days a week and everything. And then when I hit my 30s, yeah, that's when I started getting like I matured up a lot more, and then it was like later 20s, early 30s. I started maturing a lot more, and I started progressing. I see my daughter and everything growing up. And then once you start seeing that, and I never noticed my parents saying, no, you'll wonder one day, at time, and everything. And so I started doing that. And then I'm like, wow, what a big difference, what a big difference of how you're maturing as you get older. And a lot of people, I met a lot of guys I know, friends wise, they have not matured yet, in that way, in the right direction. And sometimes I give us, I always try to give them more positiveness, and I tell them like, hey, when you get older, you're gonna have like a big deal about it. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing that I hope I never, get to that point too, just so you're aware. But on that side, when you get like now, I see you got a big event, with Dustin coming up with the BMF belt, with all that going for coaching wise. And when you progress in like a championship, 'cause I know you did before, for like like the title and everything. When you progress in there, is there a special, like say 12-week camp you do in strength and conditioning, or you just kind of plan it in a certain way?
Title fights are similar in time frame with any main event. So in the case of Dustin's been fighting 5 rounders for the past, I don't know, I think it's like 10 or 12 fights, something like that. So he's not he's accustomed to actually going 5 rounds. It's actually worse when we go 3 rounds because you don't know how to pace it at this point. But in the case of boxing too as well, like you have guys that, they come up, they start with 4 rounds, they go 6, and they go 8, and they go, with their 10 rounders and then 12 championship fights. And what ends up happening is that we have to develop more of a larger fitness level. And that, I would say, off camp. So larger fitness level, larger work capacity, building up aerobic capacity over time. And then from there, we go through a progression to where they're building up in rounds with sparring, and it's in the same time frame of the conditioning that we do inside the weight room. So from a sparring standpoint, it's specific energy systems. It's demands that they're going to go through inside the fight. When they go in the weight room and they're doing their conditioning, it's going to be general in nature, but it's going to be highly correlated over to the actual time domains. And we'll be working the same energy systems at that same particular, in the same sense. What we also do is we make sure that it's controlled. So I control the variables as opposed to uncontrolled variables in sparring, right? You got your sparring partner, you don't know what they're going to do, so on and so forth. But the game plan still remains the same, understanding their limitations, and then also making sure that they're hitting those energy systems that are going to help aid in those championship rounds, and then also help with recoverability. So it really is just pushing the pace a little bit higher based on a regular fight to a championship fight.
That's amazing. Because I know a lot of people. I know some champions. You know, they're in different amateur promotions and everything. And I see that maybe they definitely will take, you know, and hear that, because I was wondering the same thing, because I know you got a lot. They like to progress in certain ways too and everything. And they were wondering also is before you hit the weight room, or say you do cardio first, then hit the weight room, and then go to cardio again, or
No,
you know,
no.
if you're MMA.
So in MMA, it depends on their training schedule. Like if they're doing their skills training, it also depends on the athlete and what they need, right? If they're highly efficient and they have experience, they're veterans, some of those guys will do their strength and conditioning first because that may be something that they need more of, as opposed to their actual skills training. And you flip that over, and then you got the guys that are new to the game, maybe you know, some young up and comers that still need more technical efficiency. So we want to get them their technical work first throughout the day, and then they come in and do their strength and conditioning. Their conditioning is going to be after the weight training, because we want to get as much neural stimulus as possible when we're talking about lifting weights. So high neural demand in the beginning, tapering it down to more muscular demand, and then working into your cardio. Now, it also depends on where they're at in camp, if they're off camp, if they're in camp. If they're in camp, when we do our conditioning, is going to be integrated into the actual weight room. So it's concurrent training that is not going to throw the organism in two different directions. So we're not going to do some type of aerobic work mixed in with some lactic work, because the body doesn't know what it needs to adapt to. So we want to stay similar in time frames. So let's say, for instance, we're working a contrast test, getting closer to a fight, where we'll do some type of isometric contraction or overcoming isometric for high force. And then we'll use that in contrast and work on some potentiation, where we use that same pattern or that same position, and we'll do some explosive power right after that to improve on their explosiveness or rate of force. And then that time frame that it takes them to do that actual movement, let's say that contrast set, that's the time frame that they're going to do an actual set inside their conditioning. So that'll be something like, you know, prowler sprints or repeat sprints on the assault runner or an airdyne bike, something like that, where it's highly anaerobic, alactic, and repeatability. So you're really focusing on that entire day of that particular block of training. That session is going to be predicated towards power, strength, and power endurance.
Yeah.
Now,
that's amazing.
After that, though, however, we're going to go ahead and still work on the lower intensity work, either on the odd days, or if they don't have a training session that day, they can do their road work in the morning. So they'll do their aerobic work in the morning. Let's say they don't have skills training, they could come in and do weight training in the afternoon and finish it off. Now, if they want to do their weight training in the morning, that's fine too. They do their weight training, they do their anaerobic conditioning, and then they'll go and do either the skills training, and then they'll follow that up with aerobic training for maybe, you know, a calorie deficit or something like that, on top of the fact that it's good for recovery when you do a low intensity interval style.
So during that weight cut too, you guys progress, like say they're cutting the weight and everything, and they're getting the weight cut and they're getting down to the fight, you know, fight day to weigh in. You slowly you know, do less workouts and then more body movement.
Yeah, so when we taper, we bring down volume, we bring down intensity a slight bit. So you're bringing down volume roughly 30, 40, maybe even 60%. And the goal really is to get in and get out of there, right? You shouldn't have a long duration of time inside the weight room. The duration of an actual workout goes from somewhere around 75 minutes in week 8, all the way down to about 45, even 30 minutes in week 3, or 3 weeks out, I should say. So 8 weeks out, 3 weeks out. And really it's focusing on the things we need to focus on, which is basically the speed of the sport. So speed, power, explosive power, and power endurance, right? Or explosive strength and power endurance. And and every day can be auto-regulated. So if, let's say, for instance, a guy comes in and he's beat up, right? Sore, tired. We go through a test and we see that, he's not or she's not capable of hitting their baseline numbers based off of the assessment that we did in the beginning of camp. If it's 10% down or something along the lines of that, and I can go into like fatigue management, objective indicators and all that. But if that objective indicator showcases that they're fatigued, then that's when we auto regulate, and we may have something like a 5x5, on a 50% for dynamic effort. We may have to taper that off to only 3x5s, but we keep the percentage the same and they still go after it. We just don't want that amount of accumulated volume. And then we focus on mobility, we focus on range of motion, we focus on regenerating the tissue, stuff like that. That's going to give them the ability to keep pushing forward throughout the weeks of the camp.
Nice. And then also on that side, after the weight cut, and you guys weighed in, we're good to go, everything's equipped, they're ready for the fight next day. When do they hydrate with that's when they take the battle test, and they take the battle tested, and for recovery real quick, when they take that, that replenishes everything really quick, and then it gives them what they need to really get amped up and ready. Now on that part, since they got the liquids now in, what would be a good suggestion as food intake after the weigh-in?
Yeah, so first they need to rehydrate. They need to rehydrate fully. So we want to see, a good indicator without having to do any type of like hydration testing. Just make sure the pee is clear, right? The urinating is clear. Now we have the ability, and usually that's going to be good within 2 liters of water down, along with the mix, right? The battle tested mix. Then you go into your food intake. Now your food intake, you want it to be easily digestible. So something that's easily digestible is going to be a fast digestive carbohydrate. It can be white rice. Sushi is something easy for my guys to eat. They like it anyways. So fish and white rice primarily, something very easily digestible, can be broken down, can be assimilated quick, and nutrients can get to the tissue and all the other cells needed for replenishment. And then roughly 3 hours later after that, you want to have some more sustainable, slower digestive meal, whether that be, red meat. It can even be some type of brown rice or something with higher fiber and some fats too as well, some healthy fats. So whether it be an avocado or any type of like olive oil or something like that you can put in. We always are going to do some omega-3s, so fish oils are going to be good there too as well. But you want to put some healthy fats in there to help with not only the absorbed or the slower digestive process of all the other macronutrients, but also it's healthy fats for neural design and helping you recover from the actual weight cut itself.
Nice, yeah. That's really beneficial, because even having that battle tested is really equal, because I wish I had that after the weight cut a lot of times, because I need the the electrolytes and everything to really replenish everything too, and the vitamins. So on that side, what supplements, like right now, creatine, pre-workout? I know a lot of people are probably going to ask me. Do you take, before you work out or after? Do you take protein? How does all that work?
The basics, there's so much testing done on creatine monohydrate. I think that's something that has been tested and proven to work. 2 to 5 grams. You don't really need to load it. I know people say, yeah, you should load it up. And sometimes maybe you should, but you don't really need to cycle on and off of it unless you just don't want to spend the money on it primarily. But 2 to 5 grams, or I think it's 0.04 kilograms per pound of body weight is the recommended dose. And then you can also, work with beta alanine is good for pre-workout. Also helps with lactate buffering capacity and energy production from training. You can also do a vasodilator, so an L-arginine, L-citrulline can be good there too as well. I also like beetroot extract. That's good for blood flow, which is going to also help push oxygen to the working tissue. Get you, if you're a bodybuilder, that's good for muscle pumps, so on and so forth. And then as far as, there's so much, man. But pre-workout, that's what I would go to, and then obviously caffeine. A small dose of caffeine Not a big fan of the pre-workouts, but I might come out with one that's a little bit cleaner. I just don't like the jittery effects that I get from the beta alanine and like a high caffeine. Like I already take enough coffee to kill a fucking horse. So I don't want to take any more caffeine with my pre-workout. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, lower dose caffeine, man. There was at one point I was probably taking about no lie, probably about a gram of caffeine a day, even more. So I definitely don't want to go overload on that. Post workout, get your electrolytes, especially if you're doing a long lasting training session that you are losing electrolytes and you're sweating a lot. You know, carbohydrates, any form of carbohydrates. I actually like brain cyclic dextrin. It's faster digesting. So, that will help. That's also inside of battle tested. Actually, I'm going to reformulate it. It actually has dextrose in it, which is another fast digesting, but brain cyclic dextrin is probably the top of the top when it comes down to being able to assimilate and break down faster. And then essential amino acids, right? Essential amino acids, protein synthesis, help replenish, help with rebuilding what you've broken down, what was broken down, right? And then as far as food intake goes, primarily you want a complete protein source, right? I'm not a big fan. I've done it all, man. I've done vegan diets, I've done carnivore diets, I've fasted, I've done intermittent fasting, I've done long-term fasting. What I've come to realize is that the body needs what it needs. And so a well-balanced, complete nutritional breakdown, getting your body the proper macronutrients it needs and the micronutrients and minerals is going to be beneficial for you long-term, especially if you're a performance athlete. So we want to make sure that we're replenishing the insulin, the glycogen that has been depleted. We want to make sure that we're putting in the protein with a complete amino matrix. And then also make sure you're hydrated. So getting your electrolytes, your potassium and magnesium, your sodium. I also like a company called Element, LMNT. I've used that in the past. It has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and it definitely does a trick. So a lot of my guys sweat a lot. If you ever seen Jake Bostwick in any of our training videos, that dude sweats like no other person I've ever seen in my life. Him and probably King Mola Wall, they both sweat more than anybody I've ever seen. And so I know for a fact that, they're going to need some element after their training, along with battle tested, so that they can recover. Now, the good thing about battle testing is that it does have electrolytes in it. But again, if you want to just a straight electrolyte, element's good too as well.
Nice. So everybody out there, so everybody knows, very great information on that. Make sure you use that, for your workouts and everything to get started, especially in the mixed martial arts side too, because it's really going to help out in your progression in the right way also. And I'm ask you 3 questions real quick, pretty good one. I already said the supplements wise, and then coaching wise, if somebody wants to do your mentorship for coaching and get into that, like it's really beneficial to everybody out there. But if they want to get into that, what do you suggest? Like saying, just give them like some, why should they get into, use, mentorship, your mentorship for coaching?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when it comes down to progression in anything that you're trying to accomplish as a professional is you want to learn from the people that have done it before you, right? So my mentors, I had to seek out, right? I had to go on social media. At that particular time, I had to call them up. Like I called Louis Simmons when I was 16. I called and I think I emailed Joe DeFranco, and now I'm able to have full conversations and rest in peace, Louis Simmons, but I've been able to grow close with him, before he passed. And I was able to learn not only from, what he told me individually, but also from all of the content that they produced over the years, the books that they wrote and all of that. And so what I wanted to do I wanted to give the opportunity for coaches coming up, not only in the combat sport world, but just in sports performance in general, and also in fitness, the ability to learn from my wins and my losses. So now I can tell you what worked for me and what didn't work. That way you don't have to go through the trials and the tribulations that I had to go through. I did it for you. Now not to say that you are going to go through that, and you should in some capacity, because you need to learn from your own mistakes. but it is always good to learn from those that have done it before you. So that's why I really decided to do it. And I put together an entire list of things, not only from what I've done, but from what other coaches that I respect have done too as well in a successful manner. So with the mentorship, it's not just, me talking to them. It's a collection of data. It's a collection of knowledge and information that's been passed down to me that is now being given to them.
Very nice, very nice. And then the other thing, how much should they? This is a big one because I just want to ask this one. Social media.
Mhm.
How is that so valuable today, especially for the coaching and getting the videos out and Facebook and everything, especially those short videos you do? How valuable is that for coaching to get out there?
If you're not doing anything on social media nowadays, you're fundamentally irrelevant. And the reason why I say that is because that's where the attention is. So you have to go in any business, you have to go where the attention lies. So you have to develop a voice on that platform, or on those platforms, in order for yourself to be heard, in order for yourself to make a living. And even in your own local area, you should have some sort of social media presence based around your local area.
Mhm.
Now, if you're going to do something that is more nationwide or worldwide, then you have to do the same, and you have to reach an audience that is predicated to whatever you're trying to hit, whether it be the fitness industry, whether it be, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But when you look at it, you look at the ones that are very successful, know how to market, right? And the ones that stay in the game know what they're talking about and know how to market. So it's one thing to know what you're doing, it's another to know what you're doing and being able to show people how to do it, right? And then showcase your abilities and have people want to follow that. So I know a lot of coaches that are phenomenal, but nobody knows who they are. And that's a big issue because now they're leaving things on the table, they're leaving their information and everything there for the people that they have connected to in person, right? Where now, if you're trying to change lives, if you're trying to change, I know it sounds crazy, but even change the world and some of the views that you have, right? Change people's perspectives, help people, influence people, inform people, then you have to get on social in order for you to get that across a wide variety and a wide range of people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people, they don't understand. That you need to be on social media to get your word out there, get your name out there a lot more. It's a lot nicer. Because back in the day, it used to just be like magazines, newspapers, and all that kind of stuff and everything. So a lot easier to get out there and everything.
And you know what? That was a form of it back then. Newspapers, magazines, blog articles, things like that. I mean, Joe DeFranco wrote blogs all the time, wrote articles all the time, and that's how he, started to develop his name. He put things on YouTube, but YouTube wasn't big then. Imagine if he was who he was then and what he does now, he'd be 10 times as big as he was. So it really, and even with Louis, same thing, right? If Louis is putting out things on YouTube, he'd have 1 million followers, he'd have 1 million subscribers, and who knows who else he could have helped, right? From different parts of the world, So, but I like it. I think it's a good and a bad thing. People go on there and they try to judge themselves based on other people's accomplishments, which I don't think that's healthy at all. You need to judge yourself on what you've accomplished and what you've triumphed over, and your progressions. And everybody's going to find themselves doing that. You're going to compare. It's just our human nature to compare. But you have to compare yourself to yourself as opposed to those other people, because that's where people start to get down and they stop wanting to put out content because they fear of what people say, or they're not doing it as well as this person, or they're not doing it as well as what they see on this person's feed or whatever. And that's an issue, and that's stifling, that halts people's progression, and you don't want to do that.
And the last thing is how are people? Why should people stay humble? And the reason why I'm asking this is because when Dustin brought you up on Joe Rogan said you are very well respected, in MMA community and everything on his podcast. And I seen you shared that and everything. And I'm hoping you get on there, Joe Rogan stuff also, on a podcast. It's gonna be awesome to see. But I'm gonna ask you this: the reason why I'm asking is because a lot of people, when they get that right success and everything, they move up. They think like, oh, they don't stay as humble, right? You, you're always staying, uh, very humble in everything you're doing and very respect in everything you're doing, and you're very inspiring a lot of people and motivating a lot of people on every platform. So, how should everybody stay humble?
There's a, I mean, you have to stay confident, but you also have to have self-awareness. And I think I know what I don't know, which keeps me humble, right? It keeps me grounded. I like the word grounded as opposed to humble. It keeps me still knowing that I need to learn more. So I know that I don't know everything. I damn sure know that. I know that I have great experience in a certain aspect of training in this industry. I do know that I've helped a lot of people, but I do know that I haven't helped as many as I could. So that keeps me based, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me humble. And that keeps me wanting to do more, that keeps me wanting to learn more. And it keeps me wanting to learn more in so many different areas because there is weak links in any chain of progression, right? And you have to find those weak links in order for you to go forward and further down the line. So keeping me humble is keeping understanding that I don't know everything, right? At the same time, there's a fine line between confidence and being cocky and being arrogant. You have to be confident in your abilities because if a fighter comes to me or an athlete comes to me at a high level, I have to be confident that I can help them. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not confident in that at that time, I will not work with that individual because I'm not going to waste my time and their time, and I'm not going to put them in a bad position to not be successful, right? Mm-hmm. So I always have to be confident in my abilities. I have to be confident in my abilities of what I don't know and what I do know. And when I'm confident in what I don't know, I'm confident enough that I know that I'm going to learn because I've already pinpointed the issue. So the biggest thing for me is self-awareness. If I'm aware of what I don't know and I'm aware of what I suck at, I can work it if I need to. If I don't need to, I delegate it, right? I know that I'm not a guy that likes to work the weight cuts anymore. Like, that's just not me. Reason why is because I've done so damn many that I don't want to put my guys through it because I know how it feels, right? Yeah. What I do is I go, well, I'm going to have my guy Jose do that, right? I'm going to have the one person that enjoys that process. Yeah. And then now I can delegate that to somebody that I know that's going to put his all into it. So that comes with self-awareness. Doesn't mean that I can't do it. It just means that I know that I won't do it to the best of my abilities. And so you have to be humble enough to let that go and to outsource it. Same thing with some physical therapy. I know, listen, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor. So if you have problems that, I know that a doctor can solve as opposed to me doing some special exercises, then I'm going to delegate that out and I'm going to outsource it to those that know how to do it from a clinical standpoint. So it really just comes down to that. And I think that that keeps you humble too as well. And when I do that, when I show that, it gets more respected overall. I think that it's a respectful thing, or it's a respected thing when a person can say, yeah, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, as opposed to a know-it-all or somebody who's faking the funk, right? Yep. I could talk with anybody. I could hold my own with anybody. But I will tell you right now, stay quiet if I don't know it. Because if I don't know it, I don't want to sound like a fool anyways. Yeah. But I can transition it into anything. Like you guys are talking about, whatever the case, politics are the biggest thing. When we talk about politics, I start transitioning that thing into fighting. I'm like, you know what was cool about that? It kind of reminded me of the Israel Adesanya fight. And then I go into that and I transition out of it and feel comfortable talking about it. It's funny. So real quick story. So Kevin James is a good friend of mine. He's actually my son's godfather. So Kevin James is a comedian, he's an actor. And Kevin has his bit where he goes and he talks about his wife taking him to you know, taking them to a party that's like high level, that a lot of rich guys are there, a lot of very socially inept, or you know, socially, it's a very socially challenging place to be, right? For him, because you got some guys that are intellectuals, academics, and high scholars, and he's not that guy. So the minute that the guys start talking about politics, they start talking about highly intellectual things, he automatically has nothing to say, and he tries to put himself in a position to make himself sound like he knows what he's saying, and then he digs himself deeper into a hole. So as he's going to talk about it, they go, "You don't know what you're talking about, do you?" And then he goes, "You don't know what you're talking about." So, and then he starts talking out of the side of his mouth, and then that's when people start to realize this guy's not genuine. So when I look at it, I go, well, I never want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So every time I listen to that bit, it reminds me of being authentic, being yourself, right? And being humble enough to say, yeah, I don't know. This is something that is out of my league, out of my territory, or, you know, something that I don't really study, man. So I really can't talk to you about it. But we can talk about fighting. We can talk about training. We can talk about getting stronger. You see me? So it usually always, you know, parallels, or I should say it pivots to that.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it, you know, because like especially in politics, I don't like talking about. I'll be honest with you, politics, why? But I'll switch it around too because I have, you know, I want to, and I totally understand, you know, like when I watched a couple of his movies, Kevin's, you know, and I seen them, and right when you said that, I was like, yeah, I could definitely see him doing that, you know, because and it's funny because I see it in that way, you know, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm a big Adam Sandler, you know, Kevin James fan too. On that part because the movies, you know, they're hilarious, you know, comedian wise and everything. So that's awesome on there. Um, wow, this is very inspirational, motivate everybody out there too. This you know, a lot of information everybody take in. And Phil, I really appreciate coming on the podcast and talking to me, and then talking to everybody out there to really know your journey, and then also know, you know, how you stay humble in everything you do, or stand your ground in everything you do, and keep grounded. So
thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. You're doing a great job with the podcast. Keep it going.
thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. And then I did listen to your podcast also, just so you know, and your podcast is awesome. So please, if you want, you can let everybody, if you would let everybody know how to reach you, where to watch your on YouTube, and then also where should they follow you at to get more, you know, about your workouts and everything.
Yeah, go to my website, darustrong.com. You can go to my Instagram at darustrong. Follow me there. My YouTube channel is still Daru Strong. Everything's pretty much Daru Strong. If you want to email me personally for consults, for coaching online, I do that too as well. You can email me, phil@darustrong.com. Or if you're looking to just get into some training, go to tapin at darustrong.com as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. You have a great night, and I appreciate it. And I definitely keep an eye on you. So thanks a lot, Phil. I appreciate it.
All right, man. See you later.
We'll talk later. Bye.